Route parameters are useful, but they also can be tricky. There are various aspects you should be aware of, which you might or might not want to change or take care about. Here's one gotcha which you could face in an application. We don't face it here, but I can add it so that we do face it. Let's say on team members, so on the component we load for this route with the parameter, let's say in there we actually, for whatever reason, have another router link which says go to team 2, which always goes to /teams/t2, which is the ID of the team 2. Now, this is a very constructed scenario, but you could absolutely have an app where on the page that was loaded for a given parameter, you want to go to the same page with a different value for that parameter. And that's what I'm trying to emulate or to simulate here. So if I save this, we got this go to team 2 link here. Now, if we are on the page for team 2, of course, this does nothing. But if we are on the page for team 1, oh, this also does nothing. And that's the gotcha I'm talking about. If you are on the page that was loaded for a dynamic parameter, if you then want to go to a different page, so with a different value for this parameter, which in the end, of course, is kind of the same page, at least the same view component, you face this problem here. Now, you should be aware that if I go to team 1, we have T1 in the URL, and if I then click this link, this does change to T2, but the data on the screen doesn't update. Is this a bug? Well, it's not a bug, it's an intended behavior. The view router does not destroy and rebuild the components that were loaded when you navigate around. It's more efficient to cache them than to always destroy and rebuild them when the URL changes. But that's the problem here. I'm loading my data for the team members in created, and this is called when this component is, well, guess what? Created. Now, as I just said, the view router does not destroy and recreate the component just because the URL changed. Therefore, the code in created does not run again when the URL changed. Hence, if you are on the page which you now want to load again, but with different data, with a different parameter, by default, the view router will do nothing. That's of course not what we want here. How can we react to this changed URL? Well, in the end, when the URL changes, one other important thing changes. This $route property. It holds the latest information about the loaded route, and it will update when the URL changes. So this $route object will always hold the latest parameter, for example. And therefore, you can add a watcher here, and you can watch $route here. So this built-in property, you can watch that for changes. And this watcher will now run whenever the route changed. So here you get the new value then, the new route you could say. And in here, we can now run this logic again. So therefore, to not duplicate the code, I will actually add methods here. Load team members and put my code in there and call load team members here in created manually and also call it here in my watcher. So that I load this method and run this method, which loads my team members when the component is created, but also when route changed. Now, one thing I want to do here though, I want to pass my new route as an argument to load team members. And here, when we call it in created, I'll pass this $route. So I want to pass the route object as an argument and edit the method a little bit so that we get our route object here, and I will replace this route with just route. It's not a must do, but I want to do it here so that we get the route from outside, so to say, seen from inside this method, and we pass it as an argument when we call the method. With that, if I save this and reload, our links here on the Teams page still work. But if I click on Go to Team 2, now this page updates because now we're watching changes on the route. And this is just one way of making this work though. It's a perfectly fine way, but it's not the only way, because there is another problem you could face here, or another thing about this team members component you might not like. Let's see what that is.